1, Tennessee, on the road at number 3, Georgia, between the hedges. Where, guys, the Dogs are an 8-point favorite. Saturday, CBS, 2:30 p.m. is where you can find this. 8 points feels like a lot, regardless of how good you actually think Tennessee is. 8 points against the number one team in the country just doesn't really compute with my brain. If Alabama was undefeated and the number one team in the country, there's no way that Georgia is favored by 8 points here. So I'll turn it over to you guys first. Why do you think this spread is as large as it is? What does Vegas know, or what are they implying? And then obviously, who do you think comes out on top this week?
Well, I think what Vegas knows is that Georgia is a really good football team, and Georgia's going to be the toughest test. I think when you combine the pressure of the situation, an entire state's hopes on your shoulders, a program that is rising from the ashes, the college football playoff aspirations, the number one ranking that Georgia probably feels like they should have as the defending national champions. When you combine all of that together, plus the opponent, this is going to be the toughest test of Hendon Hooker's career to this point. And, this game definitely has big LSU Bama 2019 vibes to me, where you've got the upstart program with the quarterback that is just shattering records, talented wide receiver core, maybe a defense that hasn't shown its full potential yet, but they're coming into the traditional powers house as about a touchdown dog. I looked it up. That LSU Bama game in 2019, Bama was a 6.5 point favorite going into that game. So very similar line. Lots of parallels here. Big opportunity for Tennessee. It's just a lot of pressure going into the house of the defending national champion. I've said it on the show last week when we were pulling out our top four. I feel like we forget just how dominant Georgia has been in some of these games because they're kind of overshadowed by the flashiness of Tennessee. Now, do I think 8 points is way too much in this game? Yeah, I do. I think Tennessee's offense is going to keep this one closer than 8 points. I think we're going to have a game very similar to the Alabama Tennessee game from a couple weeks ago. Maybe not as shootout heavy, but it's going to be a close back and forth game. So I'm taking Tennessee in the points, but I do think Georgia wins this one outright. It was less than a calendar year ago that Georgia won against Tennessee 41-17 and held Tennessee to 55 rushing yards, guys. Like, that's not that far in our recent memory. I even saw some Georgia fans now. I don't agree with this, but they're comparing it to the Arkansas game last year, where they think that they're just going
Oh my
to
heavens.
have a top 10 team that has a lot of hype come into their house and just, steamroll them with their defense. But I don't think that happens. I do think Tennessee keeps it close. And it's fascinating to me that in this game, the two best units on the field are matching up with the Tennessee offense and the Georgia defense. And I don't know who you guys give the edge to there because I'm really struggling to see who the best unit on the field is. But the two questionable units are matching up too, the Georgia offense and the Tennessee defense. And I think that one decides the game. Whichever one, the Georgia offense or the Tennessee defense, whichever one steps up more, will decide who ultimately wins this game outright.
Yeah, looking at those numbers, Tennessee has 49.4 points per game, which is first in the country. Georgia with the second ranked scoring defense, giving up 10.5. That, something's got to give. Like you were
Something's
saying,
got to give.
something's got to give at some point. I do want to point out, I'm not entirely convinced that the Vols aren't the better team on a neutral field. And as much as Athens is one of the best venues in college football, I don't know that it's worth 8 points. This game's not nearly as high scoring as Tennessee is going to go against Bama. I think this one stays somewhere in the 40s realm. I don't think they quite break into the 50s here. And it's not going to be that high scoring. But for me, this one comes down to the signal callers. I think Hendon Hooker is playing amongst the best in the nation right now in terms of just quarterback play, and Stetson Bennett's cooled off a little bit. I think that he's going to need to be able to come back out, do what he needs to do to keep the Dogs in this one, leaning on the run game, leaning on guys like Brock Bowers to make big plays. By the way, Brock Bowers is going to be a mismatch against this Tennessee defense. I don't think the Vols have an answer for him. And so I think you could see him get north of 10 targets in this game and actually be effective with all 10 of those targets where it's not actually forcing him the ball. I think they're going to run the ball great. I don't think that Tennessee is going to be able to completely hold them down, but I do think this one comes down to the quarterbacks ultimately. I don't think running the ball and trying to put together these long sustained drives is going to do it against Tennessee when they can jump back out on the field and score in a second. That's just the kind of thing that deflates a crowd. I've talked about it in the past. If you want to deflate a crowd and take them out of game, blow people out, score really quickly, big plays, and just kind of take them out of it, or you just sit on the ball. I think Tennessee is about to take a lot of the air out of the crowd for this one. Just come out, score 14, 21 points in the first quarter, and you make this one feel like a different type of game for Georgia. Just in terms of sheer points, I'm going to go ahead and take Tennessee to cover this one with a slight edge towards Georgia to win the game. But if Stetson Bennett's pedestrian again, and if he doesn't step it up, I think Tennessee probably picks up the road win. So I'm going to go ahead and take Tennessee +8, and I think Stetson Bennett is the key to all of this.
Yeah, I think Tennessee's got to score early and make a statement to help take that crowd out of it. Now, a lot of people have been saying, well, Tennessee did it against Bama, so why can't they do it against Georgia? If you remember back to that game and remember what we've talked about all season, this Bama secondary has been Swiss cheese. I mean, they have just not been reliable, especially in the deep passing game. Their safeties are not able to run with receivers like Jalen Hyatt. Plus, on top of that, you have Josh Heupel scheming guys like Hyatt open with switches, with different route trees that look very similar, that start out of the same formation. And a team like Alabama just was not able to consistently shut down that passing game. Georgia's secondary is far better than Alabama. Their defense as a whole is much better than Alabama's. That being said, I worry about Georgia's ability to consistently pressure Hendon Hooker in order to make mistakes. They won't have Nolan Smith for this game, one of their top edge rushers. He's probably done for the year. And you look back at the Bama game, and one thing that Tennessee did well against that pass rush was start to eliminate Will Anderson. So you're already telling me that you've got maybe your most electric pass rusher who's out for the year. How does Georgia adjust? What kind of schemes do they bring? I kind of think that Hendon Hooker, he might face the most pressure he has all year and the best secondary all year. That being said, though, I still think he outscores Stetson Bennett and what this Georgia offense can put on the field. So I'm going to take Tennessee +8. If Tennessee's defense can truly stand up and play like they have the rest of this season, they will beat Georgia. I know it's a road game, but I like Tennessee's offense to put up enough points to make Stetson Bennett uncomfortable, maybe have to force the ball down the field. We'll see. I'm kind of riding with the Vols. I just, if they get blown out of this game, I'm going to be shocked because I'm going to feel like you discount everything we've watched up until this point in the season. I just refuse to believe that Tennessee's not actually a legitimate threat. Georgia's a very good football team, probably 1-2 with Tennessee or Ohio State, depending on how you see it. I like Tennessee in this one, though. I think it feels like 98, man. It's the team of destiny vibes, and there is something that you have to account for with that.
Yeah, I'm doing some quick math over here, looking at the SP Plus rankings, and advanced analytics have their place, and obviously, emotion's going to factor in a lot more. According to Bill Connolly, he thinks the spread is about right on, even on a neutral field. If I'm doing my calculations right, it's
Mhm.
about a 6 or 7 point spread. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think Georgia's going to pull away, and I really do think whichever one of those secondary units, the Georgia offense or the Tennessee defense, steps up more,
Yeah.
that's going to decide your game.
Gracious hip.